Hey everybody, welcome to today's presentation, Say Hi to ROI, 3 Keys to Creating a Better Sales Culture. I'm going to be moderating today. I'll introduce our speaker here in a second, but we are so pumped to have all of you here on the line with us today. We've got customers, we've got new friends, we've got people from Market Source and Uplands, and I think I saw someone from Chevron. So that's pretty cool. We are really pumped that you are here and going to spend the next 45 minutes or so with us. So before we get started, I will do the obligatory housekeeping. We are going to send a recording, so if you need to hop off or if you're just like, whoa, this was incredibly helpful, I want to share this with everyone I've ever met, we got you covered. We'll send that to you via email after this presentation. There is a Q&A, so you can chat those in. You can type it into the little Q&A box there in your Zoom screen, and we'll scoop those up as we go. We also got a lot of really good questions before the webinar started, so I'm going to kind of organize those, put them all together, and then throw them at my colleague here. So first though, I'm Jamie. I'm on the marketing team. Again, I'm going to be moderating today. And today's webinar is high level. It's just all about being a great sales leader and coaching your team to sales excellence. But just to give you a little bit of background about Ambition, we're a sales performance management platform, and we help you transform your teams into powerful revenue engines. We've got everything from TV, leaderboards, dashboards. You can run contests and competitions. We just make it really easy for you to coach your teams and track any sort of data and metrics that you may want, so you can iteratively get them where you need them to be and drive revenue in a measurable and powerful way. So very exciting stuff. Again, this is not a pitch for Ambition. I'll leave some of that to my colleague, Brian, though. So Brian, who are you? What's Ambition? What are we talking about?
Hey, Jamie. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on this show today. No, but I am Brian Trautschold. I'm the co-founder and COO of Ambition. I don't have a very witty bio, but I am very excited about this topic. It's something that's near and dear to our team here, and I think it's incredibly important for any sales organization, especially those in the mid-market and enterprise today, largely, who have more and more millennial and younger skewing sales team members. So want to dive right in. I will be talking for the most part over the next, call it 20, 30 odd minutes. I'm going to leave some time for questions. As Jamie said, we've gotten some great ones in the lead up to this webinar. But I want to make sure that we get to those. And, I'm going to keep Jamie on her toes in case she falls asleep with some shout outs as we go.
I'm here for you guys.
she's putting herself at risk.
I know.
Well, so we've been telling this story, really, I think that I've been, luckily being asked to tell the story now for a few months about what is culture and why does it matter. And culture is, by all means, a little bit of a buzzword. It's definitely an ethereal topic. But, what I've honed in on and what our research and our team has put together is what we believe is a winning sales culture. And I think that is something that's not magic. It's not unattainable. And we have some pretty, I think, distinct and unique insights about how you can build a winning sales culture in your organization tomorrow, next week, this month. And, like Jamie said, it's not a plug for our product. We're just lucky enough to talk with and work with what we believe are some of the most dynamic sales leaders in the world right now. And we hear what they're doing. We hear the challenges they have, and we listen and we react. And so our team has done a lot of research on what I call the 3 legs of the stool that make a winning sales culture. And I'll walk through them very quickly. The first is they have clear KPIs. And that is something that a few years ago would almost be a surprise. In some organizations, we'd walk in, we'd say, what are you measuring people on? And they would look and they just say quota. They didn't have very clear metric understanding of the process that salespeople were going through to get to that quota attainment. So that's one thing you have to have is visible, transparent, clear KPIs. Another leg of the stool is an effective long-term coaching and development program. So that is geared towards turning reps into better sellers or sales development people into better lead generation and better demand generation people, progressing folks in their career, making sure they feel supported, nurtured, developed at your organization. And last but not least, on here it says contests. A word that we've been using more and more is engagement, but ultimately it's the behavior change and the reward system, incentive system that drives people to act, to change behavior, maybe to go outside of their comfort zone. And when you have those three legs of the stool all working in tandem, it becomes a virtuous cycle where you take clear KPI data, you turn it into coaching, and then at the end of the day, you can drive engagement and drive behavior change with sustainable incentives and behavior focus. So we're going to talk about those things, and I'm going to reiterate them really quick just so that you guys are all with me here. We're going to talk about setting clear goals that actually move the needle. We're going to talk about coaching that increases accountability and consistency. And last but not least, we're going to talk about how you change behavior and drive focus with contests, competitions, and incentives that motivate people. And I'm going to talk about that word motivate a little bit towards the end, because I think the really savvy sales leaders are changing even how they think about motivating people. And I think it's a really important topic for a modern sales organization. So let's start with the KPI side, the KPI bubble, if you will, that from our Venn diagram. Setting clear goals that actually move the needle is probably a no-brainer for you guys. That obviously a great team starts with great people. Hiring, onboarding, getting those great folks in the door is just step one of creating a great sales culture. The next step is tasking them with what they need to do. And I think most of you folks who are on this webinar today have a team or growing a team. You already have those profiles in place. A lot of folks come to us and ask, and they say, what should I measure my people on? How should I measure my people? And, I think there's 3 steps to setting that. Whether you have a sales development team, a account management team, a renewals team, an account executive team, a field team, almost every group has some type of high-level goal that they have been assigned by leadership. Normally that unit, there's some spreadsheet somewhere that says, my account executives need to close $8 million this year, or my sales development people need to create $15 million in pipeline this year. So you start with that high-level number. That's your North Star, and you're going to work backwards from that. And so think about this in terms of the process to get to that number. We work through this exercise with customers and clients and folks in the ecosystem all the time. It's not just enough to give my colleague Jamie a number January 1 and say, Jamie, I want you to create this much pipeline by December 31st. That's great. That's how most organizations do it. I totally believe in having that accountability to the big number. But if she wants to create that much pipeline or this many opportunities or this many high quality leads, for example, she needs to work backwards from there. And your salespeople are exactly the same. So if we're trying to drive an amount of net new business that we win, that starts with, or going a step back, that means we need to have a certain number of opportunities that we win. To do that, we need to have a certain number of opportunities that we've created. To do that, we need qualified meetings, for example, that may have converted into those opportunities. And going all the way back to maybe the start for an account executive or an inside sales rep, we need to know how many prospects or how many leads or how many target organizations myself as an inside salesperson need to talk to, not just know of or just reach out to via email, but how many people I need to talk to set up a great meeting that turns into a qualified opportunity that turns into a converted op that is ultimately won. So we need to define that whole funnel of activities. Those are going to be the KPIs that matter. Now I have, those steps across the funnel for an account executive or inside sales rep. I need to create some SMART goals, and you can use other acronyms. I think this has become pretty prevalent. There's also a very good one that's fast. You can look it up. HBR and MIT have published numerous great essays about these, but I'll walk you through what a SMART goal and SMART, I think, KPIs look like for your team. And of course, I had to spell it out for myself even. Step one is you have a specific metric. And so those different funnel steps I talked about as the KPIs, if we're talking about maybe a sales development rep, for them, a very specific activity or specific KPI would be outbound dials. So I'm going to make it highly specific for them. I'm going to say I want 50 outbound dials per day. Now, if I say that and I can't do step two, which is measure it, then it's very unlikely that folks are going to achieve it. So, the M is measurable. You need to be able to log these activities or these tasks somewhere. And I've been on sales floors where everyone has a pad next to the phone and they're ticking away those little check marks. And, folks will tell me at the end of the day, yeah, my reps are doing X number of calls or X number of outbound activities. And I look at that pad of paper and I think, I'm not sure how trustworthy that is. I'm not sure how confident I am in that, but it's a start. Ideally, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but ideally that happens automatically or in some type of low friction way so that measurable specific activity is very clear. Step three is achievable. One rep, just using some rough math here, I think it's very attainable that a rep can easily make a call every 5-10 minutes, if not more. Relevant. We got a little stat for you. 41% of salespeople still believe the phone is the most effective sales tool. I know that matters a lot for us and our sales development team here at Ambition. So if you're thinking about that in your organization, regardless of what type of team you're managing, you don't want to have a KPI as part of your sales process stack, your management stack, that's irrelevant to the group. If I've got a group of inside salespeople and I'm measuring how often they're walking in the door of a client, it's probably going to be pretty low. It may not be relevant to their responsibility unless I create that type of system for that. So I want it to be highly relevant and highly ultimately effective in what they're trying to accomplish. And last but not least, I want to set a time-bound measurement to it. I want bookends of it. This starts every day, as early as you want to in some cases, and it's going to end at the end of the day. And so now I have a highly specific KPI, outbound dials. I have a specific number with it. I expect 50. I'm measuring it in some type of system, ideally not the system, which is my notepad next to the desk. It's achievable. I've walked into the sales centers where, they tell me my reps are going to make 500 calls a day, or the math says we need to make 500 calls a day. Well, that doesn't seem very likely in most cases. It's relevant. The KPI we're talking about advances the ball forward, if you will. It's actually useful for that member of the team, and it's time bound. It's not, so large and so wide that folks don't pay attention. I.e., let's make 30. I want a rep to make 30,000 phone calls this year. That doesn't mean a lot to me day to day working towards that goal. And the pro tip on this is all goals and KPIs are not created equal. Think back to a couple slides. We now have our North Star metric. We've got a series of activities or KPIs leading up to us achieving that. And hopefully you're creating some accountability and transparency for the specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound numbers that go into that. And you're going to manage that on the individual basis. But there are what I think leverage points to having goals and KPIs as part of our culture that are much more powerful than just the individual ones. And those are things like team goals, team KPIs, creating, and we'll talk more about publicity and visibility around them, but using goals that bring in multiple people, that create some accountability across the team, not just between my manager and myself, but, I don't want to let down Jamie on my team, for example, or I don't want to let down my fellow sales development reps if I don't go out and do my work. And so I think as a managers, we're building a culture, we're building a place that is hopefully collaborative, hopefully has a lot of buy-in across the aisle and across teammates. You want to, rely on multiple people or a cross-functional pod of people working together to achieve something. And so if you can craft those goals or you can use specific KPIs to get a lot of people bought into the same achievement, I think you're going to unlock a lot of productivity, and you're going to create a healthier environment in your sales organization. So part two, this is my next leg of the stool, if you will. And it's a hot topic everywhere. I don't think this is a surprise to anyone as sales culture becomes a louder and louder voice in the ecosystem. But now that you have some KPIs that we think are achievable, we think they're attainable, they're very clear, how are you going to hold people accountable to hitting those goals and provide recurring feedback to make sure they're improving, they're becoming more effective? By all means, we hope you retain them and they grow into more and more valuable members of your team. The way we believe you do that is by effectively coaching those folks. And the best way to do that we've seen from our research and talking to clients, talking to people in the ecosystem, is that you have to create a predictable, recurring feedback loop between managers, team leads, reps, and leadership that's going to increase that consistency and increase people's skill over time. And we've put together, I think, some really key, I don't want to say anecdotal, but some useful stats around how valuable coaching can be to an organization. The first one comes from our friends at the International Coaching Federation, the ICF. I believe that's real. I've been told by our Jamie's nodding. I've been told by our people this is a real number. But the average ROI on the initial investment for sales coaching is 50x. And that's so believable to me because I think the actual cost to creating a coaching program is actually not that hard. A lot of folks are doing it in silos, or they're not doing it in a sustainable way. But if you look at the 50x, which we'll use, I've seen numbers between 7 and 20x as well. No matter what, you're talking about an enormous gain in effectiveness and productivity. And I think as we get downstream with some of these stats, you see why it can be so effective. Our friends at Brainshark actually published a great piece that noted that the average increase of win rates was 28% for teams with dynamic coaching programs. And if you're a company like Ambition, improving our win rate 28% would have an immense increase in our revenue. It would make our reps a lot more money. It would make everyone feel phenomenal, I think, in the organization. So, that's a huge advantage to driving new revenue. There's also the, I think, protecting yourself from the downside risk. And this is also from Brainshark. 60% of salespeople are more likely to leave a job because their manager is a poor coach. And so I think this is something that as a sales leader, we can de-risk our investment in salespeople. We can de-risk our cost of hiring and onboarding if we become organizations with a great coaching program, a culture around coaching. That starts, I believe, day one. That continues to evolve over time. There's a tired phrase in the industry that people don't leave the company, they leave their manager. And I think this stat proves that out. If folks don't feel like they're continually being developed, they're aligned to the achievement and success of the organization, they have a path to success with clear KPIs and recurring feedback on how to improve, they're more likely to leave. And that is a ton of time and money that's going to potentially walk out your door, 60% more likely to walk out your door if you're not putting in safeguards against that. And this last 95%, which jumps right off the page at you, it really speaks to me. I'll read it out and then I'll tell you why I think it's really spot on and it's something that anyone can replicate tomorrow. You're 95% more likely to complete any goal, when there's a specific accountability appointment with the person you've committed to. And it's May here in Tennessee. You may know that we're landlocked, but we do drive and get to beaches in and around the country from here. My wife and I have a beach trip coming up. And I am the person who is very unlikely to follow any type of fitness goal unless I've told my wife or someone else, hey, this is what I'm going to do over the next month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And this totally makes sense to me. If I tell her, hey, I'm going to try to run 20 miles a week, for example, and I'm much more likely to do it, partially because she's going to prod me and she's going to start mentioning, hey, it doesn't seem like you've been running much, but partially because I'm now accountable to someone else. And so creating this type of behavior, this type of feedback loop, you can do this in your company tomorrow. Does it take more work if you're not using a system? Yes. Can you do it? Absolutely. And one thing I think that's great about this is we can follow up, and I believe we are going to follow up. Jamie will tell me if I'm wrong, with a pretty useful ebook around coaching that I think dives deeper into this topic. What great coaches are doing to instill this type of accountability within their teams. And I'll give you some of the I think secret tips of what great managers do, and sometimes what poor managers are doing. As a sneak preview right now. One thing you just want to say no to is only doing feedback or any type of discussion around performance on an annual basis or maybe a biannual basis. This is how, when I got into sales, this is exactly how coaching was done. This is absolutely how performance reviews were done. They were done annually. We talked about quota attainment, and my effectiveness, my productivity, my career aspirations really only were gauged at the time once a year. I think some of those organizations have gotten a little bit better at a quarterly basis, but it's an extremely long cycle if I'm off course to rein me back in December, which is, not going to hit the number at that point. Another thing that I've been guilty of, multiple organizations that I've been part of have been guilty of, is water cooler coaching. And I call this, the old drive-by coaching scenario, which is me, the manager. And once again, this was put myself out there as a team lead. I was really bad about seeing someone on the floor, walking by them on the way to the coffee pot or to the kitchen and saying, hey, Jamie, do you want to walk with me for a few minutes and grab some coffee? Let's talk about how you're doing. So that is great, and that's it's a very informal situation. It doesn't seem like she has to prepare anything, but it's just happening on the fly. I have no real agenda. I'm not taking any notes back from that. Very rarely are there action items that I can deliver on or that Jamie can say, yeah, I commit to go doing this. It's really just a check-in, and it's so informal that I don't think it actually drives the needle, and I don't think it's effective coaching. So while I'm all about spending time with your team and having these low-pressure check-ins, that should not be what you consider the sales coaching program at your organization. And last but not least, siloed data. Once again, I'll use my own personal experience. I was part of an organization where we did monthly sales meetings. So everyone from the team, which was across multiple geos, would get on a call at the end of the month, and district manager and a few managers would go through not only the pipeline, but then specific metrics at a rep by rep level, and folks who were deviating below or in some cases above the average of those metrics. The bad news is that we didn't look at any of those numbers, and we had no visibility as a team lead or as reps into those numbers until the last week of the month. And so there were multiple times where my team or a member of my team is up there as in the red, if you will, in front of everyone. Not a great experience. And they're saying, hey, I won't use Jamie, but hey, John, it looks like you're averaging 32 calls per day this month. The goal is 50. Well, he or she, they may not know that. The data was siloed to the leadership team, and it was only coming in long, dispersed chunks. So that person, instead of saying, the first week or ideally the second day of the month, my call numbers are below what they should be. Here's how I'm achieving towards that goal. They can't adjust in real time. They can't course correct. They can't be accountable to themselves. And so that's leaving a lot on the table of 20 plus days left where that person never got up to the expected level. So a few counters to that of what I hope you're always doing, and what I really do believe most people could do tomorrow with a little bit of hard work and maybe tying a couple spreadsheets together. I'd advocate you use maybe tools to do this and make it a little easier on yourself. But the first is always be consistent. A sales coaching program should be ideally in the same or very similar format. It should be scheduled. It should be on a recurring, frequent basis to ensure that continual development and that continual touch and feedback between, here's something I think you could work on, here's what the numbers are telling me, let's set up an action plan to go do that. You want to do that, I think at the worst case monthly. I think it's somewhere in an ideal case is weekly to bi-weekly. And I don't think that's too much for managers to get a handle on. The frightening part, and I'll talk about this in the next line, is that we see the average manager is spending a significant portion of time thinking they're coaching, while also spending even more time doing what we call reporting activity. And so, what I fear when I get into an organization, I sit in a room with a multitude of managers, is they're actually becoming analysts, and they're not taking the data they have and applying it to coaching programs versus spending a bunch of time aggregating the data. So that's why I'd advocate for using a tool to do this. The key is, even if you are in one of these orgs where you've become an analyst, using that data as real time as possible and providing it transparently to your team is critical. Once again, I think I can safely assume most of the folks in here may have heard of like a Peloton or Orange Theory, one of these type programs. Apple Watches are similar, Fitbit. We are very now conditioned to expect to have real access to our data and see where we are versus our goal in real time. I can do that on my Apple Watch right now and see how many rings I've checked off today. If you're in an organization where the KPI data or goal attainment data is not being shared until 2, 4, 12 weeks out, first of all, that feels very, I think, discomforting to especially the younger generation in your organization. But also it's leaving a lot of room on the table for you to be a great coach, because you can look at trends and actual performance within the KPIs you care about to drive effective coaching and to focus the attention on specific areas of improvement or development. Right in line with that, you've got to be prepared. Like I said, the drive-by coaching, the water cooler coaching, that's typically me in my past life, being very unprepared. I care about the person. I want them to succeed, but I'm not going in and bringing key data that I want to talk to them about and give recommendations to the meeting. I'm just reacting to what they're telling me. Ideally, there should never be any surprises in a coaching session. One thing that we really advocate here, and this is not a pitch, but this is part of our product, we do believe you should have the answers, quote unquote, to the test before the coaching session. So that may be something you could do by sending an email to, if I'm managing Jamie and we have a coaching session this week and I don't have a tool like Ambition or something similar, I may just send her the data I have of what I've seen in her KPIs and questions I want her to answer before our meeting. So when we walk in together and we sit face to face, I can say, oh, I really appreciate the context about this. I see you're struggling with this. I wanted to talk to you about X. And it's a very prepared conversation with a flow that we can get to, ideally, the last item, which is having specific deliverables for the next meeting or action items. Once again, I see a lot of folks who want to be great coaches, who are doing a lot of coaching sessions, but they're not really holding anyone accountable to any type of change or deliverable after the fact. And so, you can pat someone on the back or give them a high five and say, great, I'll talk to you in 10 days. But are they going to commit to delivering anything different? And that can be as simple as, I really want to get, my calls or my, to use my meeting set metric up to the baseline, or I think I'm a phenomenal rep. I think I'm better than average. I want to go to 20 meetings a week next week versus 15, which is the target. Setting an action item, whatever it is, and holding one another accountable to, not only did you do it, but did you change anything in your process or anything in how you're doing your day-to-day job that will help you achieve it. And I think that can be 4 steps you'll hopefully take from this to be a better manager and better coaching group tomorrow. I hinted at this, or maybe what we call foreshadowing for the Game of Thrones fans out there earlier, that a massive way to improve coaching is to automate as many steps of the process. As a manager, I hate, going and dumping 2, 3, 4, 5 reports from Salesforce into Excel, manipulating the data and saying, oh, here's the scorecard, or here's what you've done, or here's where you are versus your peers. Everything that I have to do that's manual is time away from me having a great conversation with someone or helping them be a better sales rep or marketer or CSM, for example. Similarly, if your sales reps have to go pull a bunch of data or do a bunch of manual work to provide the data for you to then coach them, you're just taking time away from them being a great seller and hopefully hitting that quota. So there's tools throughout the sales ecosystem that I think are phenomenal, whether it's tools to log calls, get rid of the sheet of paper next to your desk, tools like maybe Outreach that'll help you send more emails, some of which may be automatically, call coaching, call recording. There's great partners that we work with out there from Gong and Exec Vision. All of these things can make your team, I think, more effective by being a little bit more automated. And ultimately, what you want out of that is you have all the data in one place so that you can coach on it, more proactively going forward. So if you're following with me, if you're not asleep, I don't think that Jamie is. Looks like she's still smiling. Now you have some clear KPIs that you're focused on. You've got a recurring, hopefully frequent coaching structure that's talking about KPI performance and how people could change or be more effective at some of those KPIs, how those are going to ultimately help that person attain quota, or maybe frame it in a different way, how they can make more money or be more effective or get that promotion. The reality is, that's great, but salespeople sometimes need more, and we are talking about building a great sales culture. And so I think a big piece of that, whether you like it or not, that we see across every organization we work with is incentives, contests, competitions. And I told you I was going to talk about changing the word motivate. Something that we really believe in, that we're seeing kind of, a social change in our customer base and in our prospect base, is it's less about motivating, which is me, I think, really pushing people and saying like, hey, pushing with a contest, trying to ramp up their excitement, trying to ramp up their engagement. I want to shift that, and I believe everyone at Ambition wants to shift that to inspiring these people so that it's on them, and they really want to be the best rep they can be, and they really want to do the activities and the KPIs and improve themselves with coaching and action plans to be a more effective seller or account manager or CSM or what have you, that will ultimately lead them to their career aspirations and their success. And so we're trying to flip that from pushing to hopefully inspiring them to pull themselves up. But this is, like I said, contests are a part, maybe the simplest form of this, in every organization we've ever talked to, whether it is the Glengarry Glen Ross, like steak knives on a whiteboard or a chalkboard, I think, or it's, the parking space out front to the best sales rep last month. Everyone is doing it. Unfortunately, most people aren't doing it very effectively. And not to toot our own horn again, but we've done some really great research, and we've talked to a lot of sales leaders about, how many people actually have a shot at winning, or at least being recognized as part of the group that's in the running for these rewards. And I think it's pretty shocking that, if you're using a leaderboard, which is a highly effective tool, it creates recognition on a broad scale. It's going to get people's faces and their number, their performance in front of their peers, and hopefully leadership in their organization. The hard reality is that only 10 to 25% of people typically may end up there, especially if you have a broad range of KPIs that you're tracking and that you're recognizing from. So while I think it's paramount to use that recognition, it's paramount to do a modern approach to driving that recognition, that positive feedback loop, and getting people out there. It's very effective. The reality is that, flip it, 90 to 75% of the organization may not ever show up on it. So you've got a lot of folks who hypothetically may be tuning out or just may not be motivated or inspired by that type of engagement. So you've got to get creative. I think that, like I said, we've done research. We have a great ebook around managing and motivating the middle part of your organization, which, this is kind of a separate talk track, but if you can get the middle 60% to be a little bit more effective, that's a lot bigger bang for your buck than getting the top 10% or top 20% a little bit more effective. You got more bodies there. You've got more wins or oftentimes more room to improve as well. So let's talk about some ways to get creative, hopefully that aren't also very expensive. This is really calling myself out here, and I got this message, I think it was in Slack probably 18 months ago. Our current VP of sales, Mark McWaters, who's an amazing guy, great, very natural leader. He pinged me and he said, he gave me the no offense but, which means I'm going to say something mean to you in a second. But he said, Amazon gift cards are grandma, the incentives that my grandmother would give. And, I didn't really know what that meant. What I come to find out is I'm giving away $50 and $200 and $250 gift cards on Amazon, which I think of as like, oh, this is amazing. I can buy this, this cool coffee maker or whatever. What he's saying is that our team doesn't care about it and it's not getting people excited. And, once again, I think this is a cultural shift. I think this is part of creating a place where folks are excited and they're engaged and they're pumped up to, to change and put themselves out there and risk trying hard in ways that some folks are uncomfortable with. And the biggest thing is that I learned through the discussion with him was that the best contests and incentives, they ignite the competitive spirit, but it's not because there's a bunch of money or there's a bunch of, a cool gift card. It's because there's an experience or some type of recognition opportunity or some type of cool, unique, experience, if you will, that folks just don't really have a chance to get. I can go buy a coffee maker anytime if I really want to, but what Mark did was really take it to the next level. And the story here is that we ended up taking his advice, and we did something called our billboard contest, and we gave out, I don't even know the right way to phrase it, but the winner of our contest, which was to drive the most pipeline created in Q3, we've run it 2 years in a row, could have their own custom billboard. And this is downtown Nashville. It's Mark McWater standing in front of the billboard he won. So maybe there was a little, insider action there. But he got to completely customize this. This was 100% him. And if you don't know Mark, I really want you to. He's a great leader, great salesperson, but he's from Nashville. He's got a ton of friends and family there. And there was nothing more exciting to Mark than, or motivating, hopefully inspiring to Mark, than the texts and the calls he got from people driving into work or driving in and around downtown Nashville. And I'll break this down for you. Seeing a picture of his face photoshopped onto the body of another person, a University of Tennessee football player, celebrating Tennessee's unfortunately not very good football program. But what's amazing is he got the feedback from his friends and family and the folks around him who loved it. He also got a ton of opportunities for it, which was actually a pretty incredible part of the experience. And so we've run that 2 years in a row now. We've had tremendous production during that time because, to the reps on our team, anyone can win and they get to put the billboard wherever they want with whatever they want on it within reason. And we learned a lot from that. We learned that a great incentive, I'll put better than good, is something folks desperately want. You don't want to tell them, hey, we're giving away a $20 gift card to Starbucks and then immediately tune out. It's something they don't really need. I don't think Mark needed that billboard. I also don't think folks need that Starbucks card. But that's where base and their variable come in. This is something outside that. And hopefully, I think this speaks to the younger generation. It's something they would never, ever buy or do for themselves. And so, we try to inspire folks with trips, with opportunities to connect and really ingrain with our leadership team. We try to offer people opportunities to learn, whether that's go to a conference or take part of some type of industry event. We want to make an experience and them to feel part of something special that maybe they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do otherwise. And I think that you can create that same feedback loop and that same mental, call it dopamine hit in your organization tomorrow. You don't have to do something incredibly expensive, but if you're a little bit creative, I think you can deliver that type of positive experience for a team that gets people really excited. A lot of folks talk about salespeople being coin operated. I think that's really changing. And I think that's changing in a way that folks are yearning for opportunities to grow. They're yearning for recognition, approval, sometimes just attention and visibility to leadership. And ultimately, if you can offer that, which is typically relatively low cost, you can get a lot of great work and great production out of your folks. Step one is you've got to get visible. And so this is actually a screenshot of an actual customer of Ambition. And I don't show it because the TV looks cool. I show it because, once again, I want to talk about how cultures of maybe yesteryear were doing this and doing it in a way that I think is really hurting their engagement and hurting the effectiveness of their competitions or contests or incentives. Once again, I'll use my experience. I worked at an organization where in one facility, one office, there were about 1,000 salespeople across a few different roles. I was one of them for a time, then I was a team lead. When we would do incentives leading up to Q4, the biggest time of the year for us, we would print out monthly a giant horizontal roller piece of paper with 1,000 names on it. Those 1,000 names had the performance number next to them. So imagine how long this is. It's like a 40-yard or 40-foot long horizontal piece of paper, probably 20 names deep each way, all the way through. And that was the visibility, which, to be honest, is probably incredible for the first 8 or so people that showed up on the far left and top of that list. No one else was finding themselves. If I'm like 30 columns deep, I'm never going to go find me. I don't care. I'm just embarrassed. And it led no productivity, I think, for everyone outside of the first column. And that was a very inefficient way, or at least ineffective way, to drive a buy-in or a behavior change or any type of inspiration. And so creating a dynamic experience, a constantly changing experience, something that is a little bit more visceral, I think is key and is very attainable with what's out there today. Obviously, we believe that. I really love another part of this, and this goes to creating a culture, hopefully that's not just about the winners. It's not just about the folks at the top, maybe about the new people, and maybe about people who are trying to improve themselves. Our friend Lauren Bailey, her company Factor 8 is a great, I think I'd be saying too little to call them a sales consultant. I think they're really changing sales outcomes for a lot of folks in the market. But Lauren Bailey said something to us recently that I've quoted, and I've put it all over our company's emails and Slacks, but I'll read it word for word and then tell you what I think it means for you. As managers, our job is to celebrate the early small wins and the big failures of our team. Callbacks, yeah. Conversations, yeah. Hang-ups, yeah. This is the key to building flexibility, fun, openness, and authenticity. And back to what we said earlier about 10 to 25%, if you're really committed to building a great sales culture, if you really believe in it, you can't just focus on highlighting the top earner or the top quota attainment or the top number of calls. You've got to focus on things that sometimes may be uncomfortable. I actually sit 8 feet from the first SDR at Ambition. So he's catty corner 8 feet away. And, it's been a long time since I did that, but I understand what he's going through completely. And sometimes I'll hear the conversation that goes like this. It's going to be tough on this webinar, but you get the idea. He's on the phone. I hear him start talking. He says, "Hey, Jamie, this is Bryant." And then I hear that little stop. And that stop is, Jamie knows, that stop is not good. And so a lot of times, the young folks on your inside sales team or your contact center or your SDR team, sometimes they'll fake it. They're like, "Oh, this is Brian Trautschold. It's great to talk to you today, blah, blah, blah." What happened is that I got hung up on. And you know what? What I want to do and what I hope all of you guys can do is create a win around that. There's actually a $100 bill pinned to the wall where our SDRs sit. And that's for the most hangups in the day. It's not because we want them to suck on the phone. I absolutely do not want them to suck on the phone, but I really don't want them to be afraid of making the next call. And I hope that over time, what happens is they can figure out that they don't need that $100. They're getting more money by creating great meetings and creating pipeline and setting our team up for success with those prospects. But it's really important at the initial phase to say, you were comfortable picking up the phone again after something unfortunate happened, whether that's a hang up, whether that's someone called you back, whether that's you flipped a meeting from not going off the rails to getting back on track. Whatever the case may be, I'd really encourage you folks to figure out a couple ways to highlight some of the tough parts of the sales role, especially in sales development, contact center. That could be a real struggle, especially for young people new to it. And you want to highlight ways that folks can not only pick themselves back up and be proud of the fact that they put themselves out there, but also they can collaborate and they can celebrate those learnings together. Last tip before we wrap this up, I know I'm running a little bit long. If you can, balance the playing field to maximize engagement. And that sounds like a sentence that doesn't mean anything, but I'll give you a really quick breakdown. I really think it's important to not just track one KPI and have that as the only way that we measure success as an SDR, for example, or an inside sales rep. I think the best case scenario, because you're going to naturally have people who become better at making the cold call or sending a great email or having a LinkedIn message that converts to a meeting. You want to give people a path to success that can let them play to their strengths. And so if you could balance that playing field by creating a variety of metrics, a variety of incentives, or create an overall performance incentive that really speaks to how effective is this person at doing and playing their role, if you will, that's going to ultimately get you the most buy-in. Because I can tell you right now, we've had SDRs that were phenomenal, about just cranking on the phone. We've had people who did exactly the same number of or level of performance, very rarely picking up the phone and being an assassin in email. I don't judge. I just want the performance. I want the outcome, and I want people to play to their strengths so that they can, win personally. They can get the variable compensation or meet the goals that they want. So figure out, if you can, ways to create that high-level holistic performance metric to really maximize engagement. So quickly before we get into questions, that's what we've seen a winning sales culture looks like: clear KPIs, repeatable, sustainable, recurring coaching programs, ideally with action plans, and then a system to create inspiration, whether that's contest, competition, engagement across the organization that creates actual behavior change over time. And if you're taking anything away from this, snapshot this slide. Culture isn't a buzzword. It's going to have real measurable value at your organization. Sometimes it's going to be a lift in production. Sometimes it's going to be more effective people. You know what? If it's just better retention of the people that you want to keep, that's going to be a huge win. Clear KPIs, that's real alignment. When you can go to your team and say, we're doing this many calls per day because we need this many meetings, because we need this many opportunities, because we're going to win this percentage, and that's how many we need to win to hit our target goal, it's going to get people bought into what you're asking of them every single day or every single week. Coaching programs are crucial. I think I've talked about that enough. Inconsistency is the enemy of good coaching. If your folks aren't coming to the meeting knowing what to expect and knowing what we're going to talk about, you're probably going to spend a lot of time in the weeds. Celebrate wins and losses, like Lauren said. And incentives don't need to cost a fortune. Think about experiences. Think about opportunities for recognition. Think about creative things that your team will care about. Before questions, I'd love to share this presentation. We also, like I said, have a sales coaching guide out there right now. Please text us, WINS, W-I-N-S, pretty simple, to 345-345. We have a ton of content that we'd love to share with you. I think this Moving the Middle Sales Coaching ebook is a really great way for you to start, or at least create some awareness in your organization. And now I'll take a breath. I'll open it up to Jamie.
You earned it.
We have some questions.
Yes, we do. And I know we're running out of time, so I want to try to get to as many as possible. And actually, we'll email this ebook to you guys. So if you want to just stop sharing and we'll go full screen, it'll just be mono for the last bit of the webinar. Here we go. Okay, so questions. Carrie has a good one. So in your opinion, what are the markers of a healthy sales culture? Obviously, you laid out some great ways to track, how you get to, the right goals and all that good stuff. But are there, if you're walking in, is there something right out of the gate? Maybe it's that list of 1,000 names on a piece of paper. How would you go in and just let Miss Tess go, whoa, this sucks. You need some help.
Yeah, I think that you're right. Like, it's almost that there's sometimes more of the symptoms of a bad sales culture, or maybe we'll just call it unfriendly sales culture.
Yeah.
Walking into a place that feels sterile, I can normally tell, like, ooh, this is not a great environment.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to have that buzz. But I do think if I don't see people talking to one another, that worries me. Sometimes you can just tell people are like, oh, I don't really care what she's doing. I don't want to talk to that person. And this sounds weird, but if there's nothing of visuals or any type of color around of here's our goal. If I don't see anywhere like here's what we're going to do on a whiteboard or on a TV or somewhere, I wonder if people know what the North Star is and why they're doing it.
Yeah.
So those are a few things I worry about when I walk onto a sales floor.
That is a good point. And to that end, George wants to know, culture's cool, but how do I quantify it? What are those indicators that your culture is healthy that are tangible?
Yeah, well, I think, that's a great point. I do think it is quantifiable. One thing is I think you can ask people. I think people will tell you. I think if you start to ask some questions around, do people feel like they're being coached? Do they have the support? Do they feel like they're developing? That's a great place to start. If you just go through the 3 pillars we talked about and you ask people on your floor, do you feel like you have clarity to the KPIs and the expectations? Do you feel like you're being coached and improved? Do the contest incentives or whatever we're running matter to you? I think that's a good place to start, and it's going to give you some clues on what to do. I also think that once you have those in place, it's kind of like NPS, Net Promoter Score. You can come back and say, every quarter or every month or maybe a few times a year and say, oh, it seems like for whatever reason our coaching effectiveness or our coaching consistency has gone down. I don't know why, but it's something to dig into. I also think that you can get a proxy of it by retention. And that's not a 100% one-to-one ratio, but if you've got people leaving who you thought or you had good indications were the type of reps, the type of people you wanted on your sales team, that may mean that you already have an issue that's happening. And I do think that over time, if you get those quantifiables and you start hearing that you've got a great sales team, people think, yeah, our KPIs are clear. I understand, I'm aligned, I'm into it, I buy in. I love what we're doing coaching. I believe in, I really want to win this incentive. I really want our team to win this incentive, for example. I think that you're going to quantifiably see that performance goes up across the group, and that folks who are coming on who are new are going to ramp more quickly because their peers are more bought in and are more accessible as well.
Those are great points. And I think sort of a similar related question would be from Robin. So, if you've seen poor sales culture, obviously people are feeling one way or another. You're seeing people either stay or leave, and those are good indicators. But have you personally, or have you seen poor sales culture impact just overall performance and productivity? And I think that, obviously that's a problem that we solve for people. So we often see people at this exact juncture. So I think this is a really good question because they're coming to us going like, what do I do? How can I fix it? So what does that look like and how do you fix it?
Yeah, it's kind of a layup, Robin, honestly. But what's funny is that I think I talk about the reporting and the analysis that I think managers are kind of stuck with sometimes if they don't have a tool like Ambition. And what's fun is we see this with, a lot of time a manager or a director of sales or VP, they'll just snapshot the analytics from Ambition and send it to someone on our team and say, by the way, I started running this incentive, or I started putting this goal out there, and look at what happened. Everyone bought in, everyone changed their, their output or what they're doing. And so I think it's kind of shocking that just rallying your team around, what are we trying to do? Here's the goal. Here's what we expect. Here's what we expect from everyone on the team below that. And just watching folks perform, you can see that uptick right away. And you can hear it, I think, if you walk into some of these organizations where folks are, instead of just talking about me, instead of just talking about my quota and my commission this month or my performance, they start talking about our performance and what we want to do and how we want to go achieve it. And that's like the ultimate net add value, where you see that culture really paying off.
Totally. Well, and you touched earlier, and there's a couple of different, we joke about the myriad acronyms. I feel like an acronym for everything in sales, which is really funny. Yeah. We like smart ones because we're smart. So to that end, obviously, and that's such a great way to outline that, it makes total sense. It's just very pragmatic and logical. But on the flip side of that, Chad wants to know, how do you know if you're tracking the wrong KPIs? So you sort of outline how to correctly, pick very small incremental ways that you get to that big North Star. But how do you identify it if you kind of have a suspicion that maybe one or two of these KPIs are just not like the others, that aren't going to get you there? So
yeah, that's a great question. I hope that's what I would rebuttal that with, because I don't know that off the bat you're going to see it, but we have been in organizations where I think what happens is that the coaching program creates discovery. And so over time you start to see maybe it's a really high performer who's not doing a KPI, or they're really not doing a specific activity. And you're like, hey, Matt, why are you not doing this? And he tells you, or he may, inform you that, hey, that doesn't move my deals forward, or hey, that doesn't get me into the door with the right type of buyer or right type of lead. And so that's why it's really key to have the data in these discussions, because I think it helps you also continually refine and continually adjust as a sales leader. What are we focused on? There are times where we've made the wrong assumption many times, a lot of times, more times than I'd like to. But we have a hypothesis where we think if we do X activity or we have X type of motion, that's going to result in this type of different opportunity creation or deal flow, whatever. And, the best case, or the best leaders now, tie that hypothesis with data, and then they get context throughout the process with coaching, and they figure out, hey, you know what, this thing that we tried, it doesn't give us a lot of leverage. It's not giving us a lot of value. So let's adjust, and let's use that. Let's adjust to a new activity or a new KPI and see if we can't move the needle there. And so by no means do I think it's a static or, maybe stagnant process. It's constantly evolving, and it's constantly hopefully being, recalculated to be more and more effective.
I want to end on one last question. This one's from Linda, and I think that it ties in nicely with what you were just talking about. You're talking about individuals on the team behaving in different ways, but getting to, the same place. Linda wants to know, or really says, I have mostly young people on my team in their 20s. Do they look at culture all in the same way? Is that sort of like the word monolithic, homogenous? Are they all kind of viewing things the same way? And how do I adjust my programs accordingly? Because I think this is my favorite topic. It's like, millennial marketers. It's like millennials span 35 years or something.
Who's not a millennial now?
Right, exactly. What can she do? How should she look at her team differently?
I sound like a broken record now, but I think having those recurring coaching sessions in a one-on-one setting, in a safe setting where you have a specific type of questions that you want to ask, information that you want to pull out of the rep and then discuss, I think you're going to learn about. I hope you're going to learn about that, because that's going to create a better management process and a better management situation for the rep. And I think it's really key. Great leaders I've been a part of or worked with, the organizations that I've been a part of with them, they know why folks are coming into the office or why people are doing X, Y, Z. And it's not just, hey, I want to make commission. It's, hey, I'm doing this because I want my kid to go to this school, or hey, I'm doing this because I want us to live in this neighborhood. And they figure out whatever those real deep motivators are, and then they manage to them, and they manage to getting to that person to their next career path or whatever. And the answer to Linda is that I don't think it's all the same. It's not homogenous. I think there's more than 60 million people in that category, and I think they represent a lot of different interests and backgrounds and diverse experiences. And I think that you want to take that into account, that you don't just have young people on iPhone who are on Instagram all day. You've got a variety of folks who have different inspirations and motivations, and you want to treat them like that.
Exactly. It's like, you are doing this for your son, and I want like free makeup and those are
yeah. And I want, I want you to have that makeup.
Thank
so
you.
I'm I'll put myself out there.
I have expensive tastes. Well, thank you so much, Brian. And thank you guys for joining us today. Like I said, we'll send the recording out. We'll also send you that coaching guide. So if you've missed the text, don't worry about it. We'll package it all up, and hopefully you learned a lot today. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you guys so much for coming.
Bye.